Hello and welcome to another installment of Metallic Reviews, the show where I take an honest look at the harder, heavier side of music and give it an honest rating. Today, we get to examine the first of two massive releases being put out in back-to-back weeks. But more importantly, we get to dive back into that twisted, weird world of those nine-masked psychopaths from Iowa. Yes, it's Slipknot and their new one, The End So Far, released September 30th on Roadrunner Records. Now, this is not only the band's seventh album on this label, it's going to be their last album on this label, and the future's a little up in the air regarding where the band is going from here. So, is this a swan song from a band on a record label worth remembering? Or does the album title need to drop those last two words and just be the end? Let's find out. When I started this album, and the opening track, Adderall, hit me, it shocked me. I'm just going to be frank. It was a bit of a shocking track. Why? Well, because it's not heavy. It's not heavy at all. The first six albums, outside of simple opening samples and these little tiny introductions, have had heavy songs blast the doors off. Self-titled, you had Sick. Volume 3 had Blister Exists. The Great Chapter had Sarcastrophe. All Hope Is Gone had Gematria, the killing name, and on and on and on it went. But this was kind of disappointing. I'm not going to lie to you. It was kind of disappointing. I mean, it's not a bad song. The chorus is actually kind of nice, and Corey Taylor's vocals are really good. But it's just a little bit of a weaker, overly artistic version of something they have done in the past. Now, that's a theme on this album. Yeah, it's a pretty big one, too. And to say that Adderall sets the tone for that theme would be an understatement. It's not that every song sounds the same or that every song sounds like Adderall, but most of the tracks on here are somewhat weaker versions of past glories. It seems like the band are trying to recapture that past, yet they're missing the mark by the slimmest of margins. And when you've carved out a massive legacy like Slipknot has, that can leave a feeling of missed opportunities. For a normal band, this album would be considered fine. Better than fine, even. But for Slipknot, there's that bar that's been set, and it feels like they haven't quite reached it here. Maybe that's just me talking as a big fan of this band, but it just missed the mark for me here. That said, there are positives. The song H377 is a nice little callback to songs like Orphan and Lek from previous releases. Corey Taylor, Sean Crahan, and new percussionist and vocalist Michael Pfaff power through the heaviest song on the album with an ear for the catchy and the memorable. The dying song Time to Sing is very well written and was an excellent choice for release to radio. Lead single The Chapeltown Rag isn't too bad, and follow-up Yen sees the band exploring that artsier side once more, yet they have enough restraint to where it isn't quite as annoying. When I first heard Yen, I kind of threw it aside. I mean, again, it is a little bit of a weaker version of a song from the Great Chapter called Kill Pop. But now that I've heard it again, it's actually a fair track. The end of the album is definitely the strongest part. After H377, you get Desaad, a really nice track featuring Taylor at his best vocally. Bluntly, this is the Slipknot I thought I was getting when I started the album. The track's heavy right where it needs to be, but it pulls back and allows Taylor to breathe over an excellent soundscape laid by guitarists Mick Thompson and Jim Root. All of this is held together by a very steady drum performance courtesy of Jay Weinberg. Then you have album ender, appropriately titled Finale, which pulls everything together in a nice nod to both the softer and heavier side of the band. It's kind of like what would happen if they mixed Danger Keep Away with something a little bit heavier off of like We Are Not Your Kind. Now for some negatives. Again, this album just feels like Slipknot attempting to regain a foothold of what they were doing in the past and missing the mark by about 6 inches or so. The album as a whole is not bad, but it's just not quite Slipknot. It's too artsy in certain spots. Craig Jones goes wild with the samples on some songs, and that album opener, while not terrible, seems to be a weaker version, again, of better soft Slipknot songs like Snuff and, again, Danger, Keep Away, and other songs like that. Even Scissors, I would say. The idea of this being an echo of previous Slipknot is especially true through the middle part of the album. Hive Mind and Warranty, while again not out-and-out bad songs, are definitely the weakest parts of this record. Then there are the samples themselves. On We Are Not Your Kind, they were used in sparsity. They were placed in just the right spots, and they allowed the record to take a break from the organized chaos that was swirling around it. Here, you kind of get beaten over the head with them in some spots. Now, this worked back on the self-titled album because they were unleashing themselves on the world. Here, again, they've built up that legacy, and after We Are Not Your Kind, they seem to be wanting to cement it by throwing back to it, yet create weaker soundscapes in their attempts to do so. But all in all, the end so far is not a bad album. It's just not my personal Slipknot favorites. I've heard this band do all of this before and do it much better. The bar for this group is just so monumentally high, and they just haven't failed to crest it. That's why I'm giving the end so far a somewhat disappointing 3.5 out of 5. Thanks so much for watching. Click like and don't forget to subscribe for more weekly Metallic reviews. Next week we get round 2 of our massive releases as we dive into groove metal legends Lamb of God and their new one Omens. I hope you'll join me. You've been watching Metallic Reviews, where I give honest ratings to honest music. I will see y'all next time.